Today I'm going to show you how to make this cute little Christmas themed bracelet. I'm calling Christmas Party Bracelet. It's basically just a right angle weave embellished and using Christmas colors and a nice little cute button. And it's fairly simple to make, shouldn't take very long. I have a tendency to want to keep holiday stuff a little bit simpler because time is of the essence when you are making holiday stuff. So this is a nice quick little project you can put together and have a few done so that people can have them before the holiday. Anyway, let's look and see what we need for this project. Okay, for this project you will need a 3mm round bead. I am using a cream colored glass pearl. You will also need 2 colors of Bicone crystals. These are 4mm Bicone crystals. They are Swarovski. One is emerald, the other is cyan ruby. You will also need 15-0 and 11-0 seed beads. These are Toho. They are galvanized permanent finish gold, which is called Starlight in the Toho line. And you will need a few grams each of those. You will also need, I've picked out a button for my collection. I doubt seriously you'll find one just like this. I think it came off of one of my mother's old coats or something. But this is going to match pretty closely for me, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. You can use any button you'd like. This is about 1 inch across, so not quite. So you'll want something around that size. Go ahead and pick out a button. Get yourself some 8-pound Fireline and thread onto a size 10 beading needle. You will need to start with a couple wingspans of 8-pound Fireline onto your beading needle, and we'll get started. Okay, we will start by putting onto our needle 4 bicones and 4 11-0 seed beads. Start with a bicone and end with an 11-0 seed bead. I'm starting with my emerald color. We're going to alternate between colors as we make this. So if you don't want to start with your emerald, I suppose you don't have to, but that's the one I'm starting with. And I'm just going to bring this down to the end of my thread. And I'm just going to leave enough tail to extend if I need to, which I probably won't. But I'm just going to leave a few inches of tail, probably about 6. Now come back through the crystal on your tail side and sew back through all of the beads on your thread here. Hold on to the tail and the beads and pull your thread through. Pull your beads into a circle like this, and then go ahead and tie a knot with your working thread and your tail, just like so. Not a big one because we're going to sew back through here, but just enough to hold things steady, making sure that your thread goes down between your beads and not on top of them. Just like this. Then we're coming out of the crystal here, right where our knot is right there. So we're just going to sew back through all of these beads to ensure that everything is nice and stable. Try not to pull that knot through your 11-0 seed bead because you're going to need it. And you're going to need to be able to sew through it again. So I'm just going to sew until I get up past my knot here and go into the 11-0 seed bead next to my knot. And just tuck the tail out of the way, perhaps, if it will let me. And I'm just going to come up into the 11-0 seed bead right here. The tail is giving me grief. Okay, so I've sewn all the way around. I am coming out of the 11-0 seed bead. Now I'm going to pick up 3 more 11-0 seed beads. I'm coming out of this side of my 11-0 seed bead. I'm going to go into the opposite side of the 11-0 seed bead, just like this. And I'm going to pull these down into one little unit of right angle weave. Then I'm going to sew back into my right angle weave. So I'm going to sew all the way until I can get to the top here. Make sure your unit is nice and neat. If it isn't, sew around the entire unit and then exit this bead again. Right now, mine is pretty neat and pretty firm, so I'm just going to start my next little unit of right angle weave. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up 3 more 11 seed beads, just like this. And I'm coming out of this end of my 11 I'm going to go into the opposite end. And I'm going to pull these beads down into a nice little neat unit. And then I'm going to turn this so I can sew back through. I'm going to sew back through this entire unit to have it nice and neat and secure. And I'm going to sew through 1 bead at a time so that the unit retains its shape. The beads don't squash together. So I want them to stay nice and neat. Once I am through the bottom bead of the unit that I just made, the attaching bead here, right here, I'm going to sew down into this bead and this bead again. So I'm going to go down into my first unit, and then I'm going to go into the bead on my unit, or on my, between my crystals here, just like this. And now I'm going to sew into the crystal and the next 11 seed bead, just like this, and pull my thread through. And now I'm going to add a little right angle weave unit on this 11 So on the side here, I'm just going to add 1. So I'm going to pick up 3 11 just like this. I'm coming out of this side. I'm going to go into the opposite side and pull. Now I am going to go ahead and sew all around this unit. So I'm going to go back up into the little side bead, the top bead, the other side bead. If you hold your thumb over it, I know I'm covering my work, but if you hold your thumb over it, you can keep your unit nice and neat and you can get nice tension as you pull it. And then I'm going to go back into the bead between the crystals, and I'm going to go through the next crystal, just like this. Cut. And now I'm coming out of the crystal here. I have 2 units of right angle weave here, 1 here. I'm coming out of the crystal here. I'm going to go into the next 11 seed bead, and I am going to make 2 units of right angle weave in this one. So we're going to pick up 3 11 seed beads onto our needle. We're coming out of this end. We're going to go into the opposite end and pull our 3 beads down and make our little unit. Now we're going to sew into the side. Keep your unit tight and neat. And then sew into the top. Now you're exiting the top bead. I always call the bead away from the basic bead, or the bead that we came through on the bottom. I always call the one opposite at the top. So we want to be in the bead opposite the bead that's between the crystals. And we're exiting here. We're going to pick up 3 more 11 seed beads, just like this. We're coming out of this side of the 11 We're going to go into the opposite side and pull our unit down. And now we're going to sew around this entire unit. Well, actually, let's sew into the side here, 1 bead at a time. We're going to sew into the top. We're going to sew down into this other side here. Then we're going to sew into the connecting bead. Now we have to get over to this bead, so we're going to sew into our first unit. So we're going to sew here, sew into the bead between the crystals. If you want to go into the next crystal, you can. I just didn't have the right angle there. So then I'm coming out of the bead here between my crystals. I'm going to go into the next crystal and the next 11-0. And now I'm going to build one more little right angle weave unit. So what you should have so far should look like this. Now I'm coming out of this little 11-0 here. I'm going to build one unit of right angle weave. So I'm going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads onto my needle like this. I'm coming out of this side, I'm going to go into the opposite side, and I'm going to pull my needles, yes, no, my beads down, just like that. Now I'm going to sew around this entire unit and secure it. So I'm just going to sew into each bead individually. And then I'm going to go ahead and sew into the bead on my unit and the next crystal. Now that unit is completely secure. We're going to climb up into this next unit. So we're going to go into our next right angle weave unit and make ourselves our thread exiting out of this connecting bead here. So we're going to go past this little knot. Knot's really not in a good place. If you don't want to make a knot, you don't have to. As I found that I probably shouldn't have. Oh well. Now I'm coming out of this bead, I'm going to sew into this bead and this bead. So I'm just going to turn my work, sew into the little side bead, the unit that I'm in right now, and then I'm going to exit the connecting bead here. So I'm going to go into this bead right here, and now I am exiting the connecting bead between the two units of right angle weave. This is what your piece should look like so far, just like that. Now, I am going to turn it so my tail is on the bottom so it's not bothering me so bad. And I am going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead, a red, or my ruby colored bicone, and then an 11-0 seed bead, and then another ruby bicone, and then a 15-0. So this is what you should have on. 15-0, bicone, 11-0, bicone, 15-0. You're coming out of this connecting bead in between your two units of right angle weave. You are going to go directly to the next unit of right angle weave, the very top bead, and you're going to go into that and pull your little beads between. Just like this, so it creates a little corner. Then we're going to turn our unit. We're going to pick up a 15-0, a bicone, an 11-0, a bicone, and a 15-0. Just like this. Now, we're coming out of the top of this unit. We need to go into the middle one between the two units here. So we're going to go into this bead here and pull our crystals down until they form a corner like this. Now we're going to do the same thing again. 15-0, red bicone, 11-0, red bicone, and a 15-0. This. Now we're coming out of the middle. We're going to go into the top of this unit here. Just like this. Make sure everything's nice and neat. Now, we're going to do our last unit. So we're going to pick up our last embellishment. We're going to pick up a 15-0, a red, an 11-0, a red, and a 15-0. Like this. We're coming out of the top here. We're going to go into the connecting bead here. and just stay in the little connecting bead. Don't go into the 15-0 on the other side or the crystals or anything like that. Just the connecting bead in the right angle weave, just like this. And this is what you should have. Now I'm going to turn my work because I need to sew into this little bead here and get to the top of this one so I can make my extension for my next little unit. So I'm going to go into the little side bead here, and then I'm going to go into the top bead here. And then I'm going to make one more unit of right angle weave. So I'm coming out of this bead right here. I'm going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads. I'm coming out of this side. I'm going to go into the opposite side and pull them down. Now this is a connection, so we need to reinforce this. So I'm just going to sew back through all of these beads that I just added. And then, now that I'm in the connecting bead, I'm going to sew all the way back to the top again. So I'm going to sew into this one, and then back to the top bead. Okay, so this is where we're going to start our next unit. So what we're going to do this time is I want my inside beads to be the red ones and my outside beads to be the green ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a red bicone and 11-0, a red bicone and 11-0, a red bicone and 11-0, and a red bicone. So we're sharing an 11-0 on our unit here, right here. So all we need are 3 11-0s and 4 bicone crystals, just like this. We're going to come through the opposite side. So we're coming out here, we're going to go into the opposite side of the 11-0, and we're going to pull our beads into a circle, just like this. And we're going to sew all the way around this just to secure it. So sew into your all 4 beads. Now you could conceivably just start your next units of right angle weave, but I like to secure everything and make it firm. So I'm just going to sew all the way back until I get to my connecting bead here. This also reinforces your thread because when you're using crystals, especially Swarovski, you can cut your crystal. You can cut your Fireline. So now I've gone all the way around through my connecting bead into my next bicone crystal and my next 11-0 seed bead. I'm going to back off just a little bit so I can stay in frame. And now we're going to start our units of right angle weave again. Now remember, the connecting units will have 2 units of right angle weave, and the top and bottom units, which I'm going to call, I'm laying it this way, so these are the sides, and this is the top, and this is the bottom. So I'm going to do only 1 unit in this one, and 2 units in this one. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up 3 11-0 seed beads, and I am going to go through the opposite side of the 11-0 I am exiting from, just like this, and pull my beads around. Now you can sew through them again if you'd like to make sure that they're nice and secure. And I'm going to go ahead and do that just to make sure that everything is nice and neat. When you're doing 1 needle right angle weave, it's always nice to reinforce if you can, because it just makes everything lay nicer and it makes everything stronger, of course. Then I'm going to go into my next, so I've reinforced everything, come through my crystal. I'm going to go into my 11-0. Now this is my end 11-0, so I need to make 2 units of right angle weave. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads. I'm coming out of this end of the 11-0. I'm going to go into the opposite end that I'm exiting from, and I'm going to pull them down into a unit. Now this one I'm going to sew up through the side and the top. Now you can go all the way around if you'd like, but since we have to sew back down, we're going to reinforce it anyway. So now we're coming out of this bead. Let's pick up 3 more 11-0 seed beads. We're coming out of this end of the 11-0. Let's go into the opposite end that we're coming out of and pull our unit down. Make sure it's nice and neat and tight, and then sew through this bead, and this bead, and back down into the connecting bead. So let's sew through all the beads we just added, one at a time. Put nice tension on it as you do this. Come back into the connecting bead. And then we're going to sew we're coming out of this middle bead here, we're going to sew down into this one, and then exit the crystal so we can get to our next 11-0 seed bead. So we're going to sew into this one, and then into the one between the crystals. Then we're going to go down into the crystal and exit the next 11-0 seed bead right here. And this is what you should have so far. Now we need to make a unit, just 1 unit on this side. So we're going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads. We're coming out of this side. We're going to go into the opposite side. And pull, just like that. I'm going to reinforce this one since I don't have another one on top of it to sew back down through. So I'm just going to go ahead and go around this entire bead or unit. Go back into the bead between the crystals. And then we're going to sew through the next crystal, the next connecting 11-0 right here. Now we need to get up to this bead connecting the 2 units right here. So let's get close again so you can see what I'm talking about. Now I'm coming out of this one right here. I'm going to sew into this one and then exit this one in between the 2 units. So I'm going to sew up into this bead right here. And then I'm going to go into the middle connecting 11-0 right here. And now I'm going to use my green Bicone crystals. So I'm going to pick up a 15-0, a 4mm Bicone, and then an 11-0, a 4mm Bicone, and a 15-0. I'm coming out of this little bead right here, connecting the 2 units. I'm going to go into the top unit of this unit of right angle weave here, the top bead. And I'm going to pull these down into a corner, like this. Okay, so we are coming out of this 11-0 seed bead here. We're going to pick up a 15-0, a Bicone crystal, an 11-0, a Bicone crystal, and a 15-0. Just like this. We're coming out of this one. We're going to go into the middle bead in our next double unit of right angle weave. And again, we will pick up a 15-0, and then a Bicone crystal, an 11-0, a Bicone crystal, and a 15-0, like this. And we will go into the next top right angle weave bead. Just like this. And now we will finish out our unit by picking up a 15-0, a green Bicone, an 11-0, a green Bicone, and a 15-0. And we're coming out of the top of this one. We've got to go into the middle one where we started. So you can see right where we started. Go ahead and go into that one, and you can go into the crystal behind it also, because we have to sew all the way over here to start our next unit. So you can go ahead and go into the 15-0 on the other side of the 11-0 you just came through. Then we'll go around all of these beads. So I'm coming out of this crystal here, going to sew into this 11-0, this 15-0, the crystal, everything, all the way around. So go through all your beads. And we're going to come up into the crystal. And then we're going to go into the 15-0 and the connecting 11-0 between here, but not the 15-0 on the other side. So let's see if I can get into this little 15-0 here. I know I can. Sometimes beads want to be a little bit stubborn. Okay, so I'm in the 15-0. I'm going to exit without going through the 15-0 on the other side of the 11-0. So let me show you what I've got. So I'm coming out of the crystal, I go through the 15-0, the 11-0, and then pull my thread through. Now we're going to sew into just the beads in the original right angle weave unit here. So we're going to ignore this 15-0. We're going to go up into the 11-0 here, and then the 11-0 on top right here, just like this. And we're going to make another unit of right angle weave. So we're going to go ahead and pick up 3 11-0 seed beads. We're coming out of this side, we're going to go into the opposite side and pull our beads into a little unit of right angle weave. Back off just a little bit. And then I'm going to sew around this entire unit. Eight units. This amount of units will depend upon the size bracelet you want to make. This right here, as it stands, measures 6 inches exactly, or maybe just a little under, but real close to 6 inches. So by the time I'm done with my clasping, it'll be a 7-inch bracelet. If you want a smaller bracelet, you will subtract a unit, you will only make 7. If you want a larger bracelet, you will add a unit, and you will make 8. Or whatever you need to make to customize for your wrist or the person that you're making this for. Now, I have made 7 units for mine. I am coming out of the last unit here. I did not add another unit of right angle weave. I'm just using the 2 original that I used. Now, if I was to add another one of my components, of course, I'd go ahead and make another unit of right angle weave to add that component onto. But I am not going to do that. I'm going to add my clasping. So I have picked up 6 11-0 seed beads onto my thread. And then I'm going to pick up my button. And I'm just going to go through the shank of my button. And I'm going to let it fall over the seed beads here. And then I'm coming out of this side of this little 11-0 seed bead. I'm going to go into the opposite side of it. And I'm going to pull my seed beads and my button down against my piece like this. And then I'm going to sew around this original unit of right angle weave. I am not going through the 15 O's that are in front of the little crystals that meet into this unit. I am just going around the unit of right angle weave to secure this. So I'm going to go around the entire unit, and then I'm going to sew up into the beads that I added that are underneath my button. So I'm going to turn this around. Sorry guys, let's back off just a little bit. And I'm going to go up into these beads under my button. It takes a little finagling, can be a real pain in the rear end to get through these. But you want to make sure you don't miss any, so you're going to sew around all of these beads. And you're going to do this several times. Now, if you want to go around the original unit of right angle weave again, you can, or you can just go through the top connecting bead and then go back around your beads again underneath the button here. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sew back around these beads several times, and then I'm going to come back down into my unit of right angle weave. So go ahead and do that until you feel that you have secured your button, and we'll be back. Okay, so I discovered if I just push it upside down, I could see my beads better. I've gone ahead and secured it as much as I decided that was good, and then I'm coming out of the little top 11-0 right here. Right here. Now I'm going to sew down into my right angle weave here. So I'm going to go down into this one. I'm going to avoid the 15-0 on this side that's next to my little green crystal. And then I'm going to go through my main connecting bead here in my right angle weave unit. And you can go ahead and go through the 15-0 and the crystal on the other side of that, if you can catch them all at once. Because once you pull your needle out, it's going to be difficult to pick up that 15-0. Just like this. Now, we are going to start our embellishments here. So I'm going to turn my button back under again so it's not in my way. I'm coming out of this crystal. I'm going to go through this 11-0 right here. Just the 11-0. I don't want to go through the crystal too. Just the 11-0. Then I'm going to pick up a series of 4mm or 3mm pearls and 15-0s. I'm going to start with the 15-0, and I'm going to pick up 4 pearls with 15-0s on either side. So a 15-0, a pearl, a 15-0, a pearl, a 15-0, a pearl, a 15-0, a pearl, a 15-0, like this. So you'll have 4 pearls and 5 15-0s. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, 5. And you'll have a 15-0 on either side of your pearls. Okay, we're coming out here. We're going to skip over this middle part here. We're going to go into the next 11-0 in the next corner of the crystals and pull through. Just like that. Oops, not like that. Like that. Now let's back off. A little bit more. Now we're coming out of this 11-0 here. We are going to pick up just a single 3mm pearl. We're coming out of the 11-0 in the corner of this unit. We're going to go into the 11-0 in the corner of the crystals, the red crystals here in the next unit. And we're going to pull it down in between. And now you'll want good tension, but you don't want to scrunch up your bracelet doing this. So just make sure that there's no slack. And then you'll continue again to the next unit. So we're going to go from this 11-0 to this 11-0, picking up our series of 4 3mm rounds and 5 15-0s. So go ahead and pick up your embellishment onto your needle like this. And then we're going to go from this 11-0 in this unit to the next corner in the unit, the 11-0 between the crystals. And we're going to pull it through. And then we're going to go ahead and pick up another 3mm round and go from the 11/0 in this unit to the 11/0 in the next unit. And we're going to continue alternating between the single 3mm round and the series of 4 with 5 15/0s until we get to the end, and then we'll be back. Okay, I have finished my embellishment on one side entirely, and I'm coming out of the little 11/0 seed bead right here. After putting my last embellishment on, I am going to travel up through this crystal, up through this little tiny 15/0 on the other side of the crystal, and then into my original right angle weave unit. So I'm going to go into this crystal. I'm going to go into the little 15/0 after the crystal, and then into the middle 11/0, but not the 15/0 on the other side of it, if I can get into it here. Just like this. So I've come through the 15/0 right after this crystal, the 11/0 in my original right angle weave. I am going to avoid this 15/0 here. I'm going to come through, come up into this part of the original right angle weave, come up into the top bead. I'm going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead and then a pearl and drop them down. And now I am going to figure out how many 11/0 seed beads it takes to go all the way around my button. So at this point, I'm just going to turn off the camera, figure out exactly how many 11/0 seed beads I need, and it won't be the exact same for you because our buttons will be different, but you'll just figure out exactly how many you need to go around your button. Okay, so I have picked up the amount of beads that I think will go around my button. Now, there's a couple ways to test it. The best way to do it is to come back down through your pearl, hold it tight, and slide your button through it, or you can just kind of guesstimate like this too. So after you've picked out the amount that you want, then come back through your pearl. Pull down tight until it forms a loop. Pick up another 11/0 seed bead and go back into the original unit, the last bead in your original unit of right angle weave between the crystals. Now, when you do this, you'll want to go back down, sew through the unit again of right angle weave, and then come through and just sew through your bead several times, going down through the pearl, the 11/0s you added and the 11/0 on the unit, until you are completely satisfied with the strength of your loop, and then we'll be back. Okay, after you have secured your loop, then I'm coming out of the middle of the top bead that I'm connected to right here. I'm just going to sew down into my unit of right angle weave. I'm going to avoid the 15/0s and just go into the main units. Come through the middle one. Then I'm going to go into the 15/0 and the red crystal on this side right here, so that I can exit my crystal and start my embellishments on the other side of the bracelet. So I'm going to turn this so I can get my hand to it. Back off a little. I'm going to come up through this 11/0 and I'm going to start to pick up the same embellishment that I had picked up on the other side. So I will pick up 4 3mm pearls and 5 of my 15/0 seed beads. We'll make sure we have a 15/0 on either side of the 3mm pearls. Like this. And we're just going to go from this 11/0 to this 11/0, just like we did on the other side. And then we will put a 3mm in between the two, here to here. And we will continue this process the entire length of the bracelet, and we'll be back. Okay, so I finished my other side of embellishments. I've turned it over. I've come through this last 11/0 seed bead, and then into the crystal on this side to finish out my last loop of embellishments. And I'm just going to sew into my work now, and also down into the right angle weave, and maybe down into one of my units, and tie a couple of knots, and then I will cut off my thread and we will be finished. So you'll just sew down into your main unit here, like we've been doing when we come back through. And we'll just go through a few of the beads here. Now I'm in the bottom bead here. I'm just going to grab a little knot here. My TV's really loud, sorry people. I was watching TV kind of while I was doing my embellishments, and it's really loud. Okay, so I'm going to go under here. I'm going to pull my thread to where it's between the beads, and I'm just going to tie a nice little knot right here. And then we're going to sew down into this crystal here. And just, you can sew as much as you want until you feel secure with your knot. And then you'll just cut off your thread and melt it down if you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and stop here just for the sake of my video length, and I'm going to cut my thread, and then I am going to melt it down like this, and this is what the bracelet looks like. Now, I'll put it on my wrist and come back so you can see what it looks like. This is what it looks like on the wrist. It's really kind of pretty. You can put your little button wherever you'd like. It's nice and Christmassy, cute, fits well, and I hope you enjoyed making this little bracelet with me today. Have a good day and be creative. Bye-bye.